Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. So, in case this is your first time here on Shop Talk, welcome. This is your 44th time on Shop Talk, also welcome. Anywhere in between, sorry, you got to be 1 or 44, otherwise, not getting any welcomes. But here with me, I have the ineffable Mala Mahadevan. How you doing, Mala?
Doing all right. Hello, everyone.
And I also have the invisible Mike Christensen, who's technically not here, but he's with us in spirit. He is back from Montreal, but couldn't make it because he got held up at the border. And so he's currently in a box to Abu Dhabi. But I'm sure he'll be back next time because he always comes back. So, in case you're not familiar with this Shop Talk, it's Monday. It's after work, hopefully, unless you're on the West Coast, in which case, hopefully you're able to kick off a little early. We're just chatting, water cooler chat, talking about a couple of events, talking about a couple of ideas, things, and of course, if you chat have anything, drop it in there. We're happy to talk about it too. Hate those border holds. Yep. Mike made the mistake of saying that. Actually, I was gonna make a joke the other way around because fun. I've learned fun Canadian stories about how when you go up into Canada, if you're just there as a tourist, it's hey, come on in, welcome. If you go up on a work visa, it's the full third degree.
My
And
best story is from Alan White, who used to say he was going for a conference, like a SQL conference of some sort, and I think they were paying him some sort of a stipend for it, or was it a PowerShell pre-con, something, one of that nature. So they asked him if he was getting any money for his talk where he was going, and he said yes, and they deemed it a paid engagement. They wouldn't let him through.
yeah, yeah. I spoke at a conference once in Montreal. It was quite a few years ago, and they explicitly said, number one, you're here to visit. Number two, do not under any circumstances say that you're getting paid for this. Number three, don't even talk about the conference. You're just visiting Montreal. They don't have to know that you're going to a conference and that you're speaking at a conference. If you do say that you're going to the conference, just say that you're attending the conference. Do not, under any circumstances, tell them that you're a speaker because, well, it gets very difficult from there. It's like, I promise, I will leave the country afterward. It's okay. The only country in the world it takes me more than 2 minutes crossing into, Anders says. Yeah, that's haven't been up there in a few years though, so I'm sure it's just gotten worse. Um, Nonetheless, we do have a couple of topics for the evening. First one, Milo's got a quick update around past Summit. A quick note that the discount code of Azure 175 is still valid. That'll get you $175 off of your registration for past Summit, whether that be online or in person. With
So,
that, go ahead,
uh,
Mala.
no, I just wanted to say that they have updated the pre-cons with the Microsoft offerings, which include a really good, for those of you looking to upgrade to SQL 22, there is a really good pre-con by Bob Ward, which I want to take, and I think anybody upgrading would greatly benefit from. The list is here. One second. Wrong. So I pasted my code. 1 second.
Yeah, I've seen Bob do some of the Bob and Buck Woody do some updates on here's what's going on in SQL Server 2022, and as always, they
So
do an incredible job
So
of
on the
presenting.
list on Tuesday, on top, the first precon is Bob Ward's. There's also one, if anybody is into managed instances, um, Nico and another person whom I don't know, they're doing a precon. That too, Nico is also a brilliant presenter and somebody who really knows his stuff. So both are worth checking out for the price, and you can attend online. You don't have to go to Seattle, which is a good thing. And from the Women in Tech group, if anyone's interested, we are hosting the usual Thursday luncheon in the afternoon. It's going to be a panel discussion with four people on various aspects of being a woman in tech, and that's usually fun. So if anyone's interested in that, you can find it on the schedule and add it to your schedule. It's a lunch hour discussion.
Okay. And that's at pastdatacommunitysummit.com.
Yes.
I know some speakers we've got a couple more days to get those sessions uploaded. Mine's been uploaded for a little while, but the certain other members of my learning path have been working hard on their presentations and will be working even harder for the next few days. The deadline, I believe, is October 12th. So probably quite a few speakers right now are furiously updating their talks and trying to get things recorded in time for that deadline. Andrew says 2022, SQL Server 2022, old news, already arguing for 2025. That's the spirit. Although, 2027 is going to be so much better. So
I'm arguing for Microsoft to get their QA back.
But Azure is QA. This is the most tested version of SQL ever. That statement from 2019 did not hold very well, I don't think. I think 2019 had a lot of bugs. I don't think that's a unfair, unreasonable thing to say, but there were a whole lot of bugs with SQL Server 2019. Some of them were pretty serious bugs. And
Right.
the first couple of CUs, there were a lot of things in there. Want to be retired by the version after the next one. That's true. Then you can come out of retirement 10 years later and they'll have you working on SQL Server 2012 because you'll be the only person left who can remember it. Sort of like COBOL. You'll be making mega bank.
Yeah,
at that
I'll
point.
remember it, Kevin. I remember 2012. I'll even remember 2005 because I started my career with 2005, like a serious senior DBA career. I was working on it from 6.5, but 2005 is what changed my career for me.
But Anders, you're certified in 2012. I mean, you never touched the product, but you've got the certification, so you are qualified for the job. That's how you know you're qualified. You got it on paper. Yeah,
I'm wondering if that statement is about Anders or the certification.
mostly Anders. I mean, so real story for people who don't know, and I think it's fair for me to say since I already let it loose. So Anders got all those 2012 certifications when they came out without ever actually using SQL Server 2012. He hadn't touched the product, did the certs, passed the certifications, apparently guessed on all the XML questions, and at that point it was like half XML questions for the 461 exam, and
I
good enough
totally
to pass.
do that.
Not even installed at home. That is the spirit. But yeah, you can. That tells you something. Although now I kind of led myself on a bit of a side journey of I like to work with pretty recent versions of SQL Server. I took the job that I have now in part because I specifically asked, what version are you working on right now? And tell me that it's 2012 because this was in 2013. I wanted to make sure you're on the latest version, or if you're not on the latest version, that there's an explicit plan to be on the latest version. I didn't want to be in an environment where, oh yeah, we're 3 versions behind and we're just never going to upgrade because why does it matter?
I think it's
And
important because, Kevin, mostly because of the cloud and because most environments are on the cloud now, and most people, whether they like it or not, they know what the latest features are. They're working on them. So you are the minority on-prem person who's still 2 versions behind. That makes it even worse than being behind with other people on-prem.
yeah, completely agree with
Yeah.
that. And I know
Yeah.
that there are people, I know that a lot of people get to a point where it's, okay, stop moving my cheese. Just give me a stable version and let me play out the rest of my career without having to think. And I'm definitely not in that phase of my life at this point. So getting me to thinking, okay, well, how much money would it take to say, let's say you make X dollars right now. What % of a salary increase would you need in order to say, You only get to work on SQL Server 2005 the rest of your career.
I disagree with what Anders is saying here, that you don't need to know anything since 2008 to get a DBA job. I don't think it's that easy.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you do need to know X events. You do need to know query store. You do need to know,
Availability groups.
yes.
Right. Yeah, there's some major, from the DBA perspective, there are some major improvements. You can, not at the type of company that you two and I work at.
No,
Yeah,
I was even talking to a place I worked at about 7 years ago, a healthcare company. They didn't have money for upgrades. They were on 2008 for a very long time. Most of this year, they decided to go to Azure. Even that place, you cannot get a job if you just know 2008 now. And they are about, healthcare companies are about as behind as you can possibly imagine.
that is true. That and certain parts of the bank industry.
Yeah. But the reason they went, obviously security reasons and patches and various things. And, you have stuff that can get them in a lot of trouble if there is a breach of any kind. So they had to go. The auditors just said, no, they won't validate this anymore. They had to go to the cloud.
Yeah. So what would your 2005 premium be, Mala? Like, how much, if I were to say for the rest of your career, you could only work on 2005, what percentage of a pay increase would you need to be willing to accept that?
Oh, I wouldn't accept it.
No amount. Like if I said you could make 10 times.
I'd be bored out of. I think about the time when Anders was planning to leave Channel Advisor, there was a job circulating in Raleigh. I don't know what they did. They were actually looking for people on 2005 and 2008. And I know that headhunter called me twice because Anders said no, and a couple of people we know also said no. I don't know what happened to the job, but I said no. And it wasn't that long ago. It was just 3 or 4 years ago. I don't care about the money. I'd be bored to pieces. I don't want it. I'm not that sort of a person. I know there are people like that, but I'm not that sort of a person.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not after every shiny thing there is. I'm not going to say that unless my company upgrades to 2022, I'm going to be very unhappy and such. But going back that long is not okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement. I don't know, even if you ordered, like, here's an order of magnitude increase in salary. If I could get away, I guess the way that I would try to get away with it would be cheating and say, yes, I would continue to work at that company with my order of magnitude salary increase and then do work somewhere else where I could actually do something from this decade. But if you put it in the parameters of you can't work with anything else, yeah, no, I'm out. That's and again, the part of it is how far away from retirement, like Anders mentions. If you're already retired at that point and someone says, I just want to pay you money to work on some old product, and it's no longer, this is my primary career, this is just something I do for a few hours a week to get some spending scratch, different story.
So to me, I have been burnt at more than one job for going after it for money and ignoring the tech part. And it's not just versions. It's just that the job I was before I came here was kind of sort of like that. It was a consulting company that accepted a lot of work, like all sorts of work. I mean, one assignment I had on that job was to create SQL Server logins for contractors who, like really short-term contractors who were only going to be employed for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, like hundreds of them. Why that company did that, I don't know. But SQL Server logins that would expire when the person log in and would end when they left after 3 or 4 weeks. An entire day of just creating SQL Server logins. And you could not automate that thing because you didn't know what database and what the requirements would be, and that thing would keep changing, every week. There would be new databases, or there would be an old one that would go away, blah, blah, blah. So this is what I did. And my God, I will never underestimate how crappy a tech job can get if you want to compromise and just say, money is okay. It can get to unbelievable levels.
Yeah. And especially in consulting where it's Look, someone's got to scrape the bottom of that barrel. Not everybody gets the great openings. Not everybody gets the great contracts. So
I even wrote a T-SQL Tuesday blog post for that. If anyone's interested, I'll post it in the chat.
yeah, drop a link to that, and we'll talk about it. There we go. The crazy login client. I do remember this one. So that was from not too long ago, the July T-SQL Tuesday. And work is a live action MMO. I mean, it kind of is, except that the leveling system doesn't work very well, and pay to win absolutely works. Speaking of pay to win, did you know that TriPass elections are coming up? See how I transitioned right there?
Mm-hmm.
So nominations are open. That got Mala out of here. Nominations are open for the Board of Elections for TriPass. This year, there are 3 open positions. President, which is this guy, VP of Marketing, Rick Pack, and Treasurer, Mala. All 3 of us are running for re-election, but if you're interested in throwing your hat into the ring, let me know. Send me a message on Meetup. Send me an email if you know my email address. If you don't, you can find my email address. All the spammers have. So get a hold. Let us know. Voting does start the 3rd Thursday of November and runs through the 1st Thursday in December. This is going to be an extended voting period this year, just based on the way that the month shapes out. And we'll have our elections for the term starting in February of 2023. And it goes on for 2 years. So through February 2025. If you're interested, let us know. Trust me, I will absolutely start bothering people to vote in the TriPass election once we get past the nomination phase of the game. There we go. Next up, we have a survey. In case you have not seen it already, TriPass has a survey. This is something that I like to put together every 2 years, and our last one just happened to be in 2020. So I'm going to post a link to it here in chat. I'm going to push it pretty hard these next couple of weeks because I'm really interested, we're all interested, on the board at getting your feedback. And specifically, there are a couple of major questions. One of them is around whether we continue doing only virtual meetings or we switch back to hybrid, virtual and in-person combination meetings. This is something that we were doing back in 2019 into about February of 2020. So we wouldn't go in-person only. We would definitely go either hybrid or remain virtual. And we have a few other questions along those lines. The survey takes maybe 5 minutes to fill out, and we would appreciate any feedback that you have for us to see how we can make TriPass even better. So if you would be so kind, take a couple minutes, fill out that survey, let us know your thoughts. The next thing on my list, this was a good weekend. In-person only? Yeah, in-person only. Forget those people online. There are advantages to in-person only. Hybrid is the hardest of the 3 to put together for sure. Between camera work, audio work, and all that other stuff, it can be tricky. But I will say that we're committed that if we do in-person meetings, that we will be hybrid. I spent the money on the equipment already, so whatever. But we'll be doing that. But I want to see, what people say. If we get a burst of people who just say, no, keep it virtual, then so be it. We can do that. We get a lot of people who are pro-hybrid. We'll try to sort out where we could meet for that. Next thing was an auspicious weekend this past weekend. A couple of SQL Saturdays happened on the same weekend. Actually made it difficult for me because I couldn't go to both. One was in Orlando, one was in Boston. It would be pretty difficult to get flights and be able to hit both of those events at once. So, was a shame. I went to Orlando because, of course, I was going to go to where it was 80 and sunny instead of whatever Boston weather looks like in October, 55, 60 maybe. But both of them looked like they were really good events. Orlando was pretty entertaining. They had good turnout. It was definitely a much smaller event than what I would classically think of with Orlando, but it was a lot larger than their 2021 event, where SQL Saturday Orlando was basically the only SQL Saturday in 2021. There might have been one or two more, but it was close to the only one. I think it might have been the only one in the US that was in person. And this year, I think it's a lot closer to where it was. Still, maybe a third of the people from a normal year, but Orlando does typically get a lot of people. But they did a good job putting it on. Great event. You know, if you've never been to SQL Saturday Orlando, go down to the House of Mouse and go check it out next year. Absolutely worth the visit, even if you don't care about anything else going on in Orlando. So next up, we have an article from Bleeping Computer. And Bleeping Computer, in case you're not aware of them, they're a security-focused website. They have a lot of interesting news articles, tend to focus on aspects of security. There's this article about new malware named Maggie. And the Bleeping Computer article itself, it was okay. I mean, it's not like the article was awful or anything. Although, as you read through it, you realize there's a lot less to this than it seems. You know, the first paragraph is that there's a new piece of malware targeting Microsoft SQL Server. Named Maggie, the backdoor has already infected hundreds of machines all around the world. And as you go on, you find out, okay, well, how were these machines infected? Well, for our man in the field take, let me link to Sean Gallardy. Sean is, I enjoy reading Sean's blog a lot, Opinionated SQL. It is really good. He does an excellent job at ranting, and he does an excellent job at getting into very deep detail. And so it's like a combination of 400 level content plus righteous ranting. And so I enjoy it a lot. Sean basically tears apart this article, essentially saying, look, the security problem that they talk about is essentially that its capabilities involve brute forcing administrator logins. That's not a security vulnerability, because you have a dumb password isn't a SQL Server problem. It's a you problem. That somebody can brute force your password. Like, okay, what do you want to do? Not accept passwords? Maybe you make your password so that it's difficult to brute force. You could use things like Windows authentication to where you can lock people out when they try brute forcing attacks. You could do other things that are already available, or you make your password 40-some characters long, and that way, in the heat death of the universe will happen before somebody brute forces. Who uses SQL authentication? This is where I kind of duck my head and say, anybody who uses Polybase, because Microsoft broke Windows authentication with Polybase in CU2 of 2019, kind of fixed it in CU5 of 2019 if you were on a domain, but then rebroke it in SQL Server 2022 RC0, and it remains broken in RC1. So, the follow-up question, who uses Polybase? Shut up. Shut up, Anders. Anyhow, let's not talk about who killed who. But it's yeah, user Anders has been banned from chat. Now, Analysis of the malware revealed that it disguises as an extended stored procedure DLL. And this is where Sean really gets into the game. It's like, wait a second. An extended stored procedure. When did we re-enter SQL Server 2000? There's been this thing called CLR. Who uses extended stored procedures anymore outside of 3 or 4 vendors doing backup products? Who creates extended stored procedures anymore? I'm pretty sure I've never created one, and the only time I've ever used one was because some piece of software, backup software, is required it. My company decided that CLR is bad and banned it. Yeah, a lot of companies did that because we've talked about this before on Shop Talk. I think unsafe mode scared a lot of DBAs because they didn't understand what unsafe meant in the context of .NET development. And so when the .NET people said it was unsafe, the SQL people were like, oh, I'm concerned with data safety, therefore we have to ban this. And I don't think that is a improper characterization of the response to CLR. And I think it was a catastrophically bad marketing decision on the part of the Microsoft teams to use the term unsafe when they could have said unmanaged or something else that is synonymous, that a developer would understand as synonymous, but a database administrator would not be scared by. And here is Solomon. Excellent. Deeming CLR as bad or insecure is not based on evidence. It's pure FUD and misunderstanding. Absolutely right. It's a lot of the same people who say XP command shell is unsafe. Like, no, it's not. It's how you use it. But you have to go through all of these steps in order to make XP command shell unsafe. You can make it, but at that point, you're doing dumb things. It's not XP command shell's fault. The one I wrote that can use a stored procedure to export directly to Excel might not be all that safe. That may be true, Anders. But yeah, so there's an extended stored procedure. Again, I don't even know the last time I saw new development on an extended stored procedure, but they've been deprecated, and you need sysadmin to do anything with an extended stored procedure. So if they already have sysadmin access, yeah, amazing. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. Great. That's how sysadmin functions. It's like if I have SU on your Linux box, I can do all kinds of crazy things. Look at this. Like, that's not an exploit. That's just you have SU. You have that right. You have permissions to do things. So Solomon asks, as far as Maggie's exploit goes, how would that even get into a system in the first place? Registering an external DLL requires sysadmin rights, and at that point you can do everything. Yeah, exactly. Same. See, Solomon, there's kismet here. This is not an issue of there was some malicious packet that you could send SQL Server and it would allow you to register an extended store procedure without having appropriate permissions. Nothing like that. No, it's, hey, if I have sysadmin and I register this extended store procedure and I enable these things and I do these other things, then I can use that to, for example, open up a reverse shell back to the attacker. Yeah, sure, you can. I mean, you could probably also do other things as well. If you're going to grant the fact that you need to have sysadmin on the box, you might even need to have local administrator on the machine so that you could put arbitrary DLLs in arbitrary places. Yeah, external DLL is extended stored proc. Yes, that was clear. So you might need local admin. That one, again, I've never even worked with an extended store procedure. It's just that old and outdated. I don't even know if you would need local admin to put the DLL someplace, but if you do, that's a whole nother set of rights that you're granting in order to even begin to do something. And the do something is, yes, once you have administrative rights on a machine, you can do things that administrative rights on a machine grant you. This is the same BS with SQL CLR and XP command shell. The supposed exploit requires sysadmin rights to initiate, and thus it's not an exploit. Right, it's behavior. It may be behavior that you as a security person or you as an administrator don't want somebody else doing. And to that extent, you want to prevent them from doing it. But then there are tools to prevent them from doing that. There are ways to limit the ability for people to do this, like don't grant everybody sysadmin. Don't go giving out heavy rights willy-nilly. This isn't someone who's using some sort of buffer overflow or some type of privilege attack to move into sysadmin when they shouldn't have it. Yeah, this isn't Mimikatz for SQL Server. This is, I granted you sysadmin and now you went and did something that I don't like. Maggie sounds like some DBA that didn't want to use PowerShell to get something done or predated PowerShell. Not sure about that. It might be, but it could also have been that the person who put it together, just didn't understand PowerShell or wanted to find a way. Maybe there was an environment where they actually were paying attention to the PowerShell, but the DBAs, like me, didn't know anything about extended stored procedures. So boom, I can get involved here. But yeah, you have to put the DLL on a system. This is not something that you have like CLR where I can send you bytes and register. The DLL has to be a place the SQL Server service account's able to access it. And a sysadmin needs to execute sp add extended proc with the required information to load it into the SQL Server process. It's not auto reading, oh, you dropped a DLL into a bin folder and now it's able to do stuff. That was, by the way, I was reading that from Sean's post. You're doing so much stuff that, again, a DBA is not going to accidentally do this. You're taking purposeful action like running sp add extended proc. Not something that, DBAs look at like, oh, well, I run this 55 times every day. What's 56? This is a thing where I would look at it and say, what is that? I don't even know what this thing is. And you go Google it and you say, oh, sp add extended proc. This thing has been deprecated since SQL Server something. This feature will be removed in a future version of SQL Server. To avoid using this feature in new development work and plan to modify applications that use this feature, use CLR integration instead, which has been around since 2005. This has been deprecated for a hot minute. The Maggie exploit accomplished by SA password posted on a sticky note on the monitor. Right, that is just as much of a vulnerability as anything else in here. And Maggie also requires enabling extended stored procedures, system config option disabled by default. It is disabled by default. You have to, again, have a sysadmin go and enable this. And all of this stuff, it's not SQL Server's fault. If you do have a machine that falls victim to this, this is a you did dumb things problem and not a SQL Server has a vulnerability problem. This is you have a vulnerability. And in fairness, you having a vulnerability is a lot easier to exploit than SQL Server having a vulnerability. Same thing applies with Oracle. Same thing applies with other database platforms. But the U vulnerabilities are a lot easier to exploit and they're a lot more common. And they're often not the things that a software developer or manufacturer of software is going to be able to fix because they'll find a different way to exploit you. Like if you're going to fall for this, you have to fall for 5 or 6 separate actions, all of which require higher level permissions or high level permissions to begin with. Like, you've got to have the ability to put the DLL someplace, to register the DLL. You have to have sysadmin. You have to turn on several things. You're performing multiple actions. So you're either blindly running scripts or getting tricked to run something that you should not blindly run, or your password is really bad. I mean, this isn't I don't know, the next Blaster or something or SQL Slammer where it's an actual problem with the software itself that DBAs can't really protect against. hey, around here, I'm the only one tricking people into running code. Exactly. That is the spirit. And the real secret is, if you never run any code, you never run any malicious code. So, yeah, brute forcing passwords. Also, as Sean points out, like, did you not notice the 105 million failed login attempts over 10 minutes? That a lot of people don't know, because all failed logins are turned off, all that monitoring is turned off, and nobody notices. Like, do you not use firewalls? Do you not lock down your servers so that they're not publicly accessible? I asked our security people if they would like us to switch to stone tablets. No, because then the NSA can read the stone tablets from space with their satellites. So we can't use that. We can use psionic abilities, at least until the Ruskies develop a method to intercept those. Then we're going to have to ban those two. Rock crushers. I mean, you could, but then there's still little pieces. You could still reconstruct the tablet afterwards. So no, we can't do that. So yeah, this was a great rant. I had to call it out. I think it was a nice little response to what I believe. You sound just like our security people. I can definitely get into that security person mindset of the only secure server is the one that has been turned off, the plug has been pulled, you put it in a lead-lined box inside a Faraday cage, throw it into the bottom of the ocean, into a trench. And even then, I don't know that I would trust it. I mean, it's like the old meme of the technology enthusiast who talks about my talking refrigerator and everything in my house is IoT and I control it all from my phone and blah, blah, blah. And you have the crusty developer who says, the newest thing in my house that's electronic was my printer from 2004, and I keep a shotgun next to it in case it ever makes a strange noise. And I'm going to be more on the latter side. It's kind of ironic where in the business world and when working with companies and technology, oh yeah, I want the latest thing. At home, no, I'm okay with, 1980s technology, because at least I know that thing's not going to break on me. But moral of the story, there's a lot of I don't know. I'm trying to think of a term that's not going to get me kicked off of Shop Talk. But there's a lot of what I would say is people being overly hysterical. Yeah, FUD's a good term. Overly hysterical for the purposes of getting clicks. They're being clickbaity. And realizing that if I say this big grandiose thing that, oh, we've got vulnerabilities in SQL Server, we've hacked SQL Server, then that gets them recognition. It gets them favorable articles. It gets them people interested. Whereas if they say, hey, did you know that if you use this technology in a way that is not intended by its users, you can do something that is interesting, but is entirely within the parameters of what that piece of technology allows you to do? Not nearly as fun, not nearly as interesting. So, yeah, moral of the story, clickbait gets clicks, I guess, because it got my click, even if it was a rage click. But then Sean got my click as well, so I think that balanced out in the universe. And I recommend that you give his article a click more than the other article, which, again, Bleeping Computer's not a bad site. It's just that the article itself didn't really cover an interesting problem. How did those researchers determine which machines were infected with Maggie? That is a good question. I did not check to see in the article what it was, but most likely, if I were to take a wild guess, they're looking for things on Shodan. They're looking for open servers, and they recognize some command that they're going to be able to run that will allow them to get something back. That's often the type of research that happens in that space. The article doesn't say, okay, yeah, that's often the type of research that happens where you're looking using open source intelligence like Shodan to see, find me all of the SQL servers that are running these versions that have something available that I can access, maybe easy password or something, and then you do a look and see, or if this piece of software exposes itself on an open port that you know of, that it runs on port 54,032. All right, well, find me everything that's got 54032 and has a banner that looks like this. And that is a common way of trying to approach understanding who's got this malicious software. Also, if they're working like hand in hand with security companies, they may look at the client base of those security companies and do some internal analysis. They may look at, if you're partnering with someone like Verizon, where they have their breach reports, you may have some ability to look at internal data sets that are not publicly available. Those are usually how you'll get the rough information on here's people who are running it. But given the spread in terms of countries and that it was focused in certain parts of the world, specifically it looks like India, South Korea, Bangladesh, it looks like. And I would say probably Shodan is my first guess. And so, yeah, not the best article, not the best way to discuss security, but at least it got us ranting about CLR and how people misunderstand CLR security so badly. So it brought us all together in the end. Unless you are one of the people who really hate CLR and were in fact afraid of unsafe mode, in which case there are a lot of you. There are too many of you. Too many of please convert like 74% of you, because there were too many people who believe that. So I think we've got one more thing. This comes from Mike, who is here with us in spirit, mostly because he's a ghost now. He might be back in corporeal form next time. We'll see. I actually don't know how this works. If we're really like a sitcom where every episode it just resets itself and we start over having learned nothing and as though nothing had ever happened, or if we have a character arc, in which case Mike has to fight for his body back or something. We'll let you know next time. We'll see what happens. But he's been playing around a little bit with the SQL syntax of any and all. And in case you're not familiar with them, any, so I'm going to drop in the link for any in there. There's also some, which is actually the same link, but you know, no, I think it's a slightly different link, because that's some or any, and the other one was just any and all. And these three pieces of syntax are things that I constantly forget exist in the SQL space. What they do is you have a single column set of values. Some and any are technically the same. They're equivalent in Microsoft's T-SQL. In ANSI SQL, I think there was a differentiation between the two, that in whatever specific circumstance, one actually meant something slightly different than the other, but that could just be me making it up. Every once in a while, I remember that these things exist, mostly because I'm reading a SQL book or something like a certification prep guide or something.
Oh, this is the first time I'm seeing this, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know of many people who really use some, any, or all. I have seen Paul White use it in blog posts before, mostly as a way of showing
So this is
how.
2022 specific?
Oh no, this is in the ANSI SQL standard. It's been in SQL Server for a couple decades. It's been
Oh,
around for
really?
quite some time. Yeah. And in case, like Mala, you've never seen this before, the whole idea is that you've got a set of scalar values, and all, for example, would say you need to match all of these values. Like I need to have, if I say all of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would need to have records that represent 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the subquery to return back true. It's new to SQL, to Microsoft SQL. No, it's been around. I remember it in ITSIC's 461 guide from 2012. It's been around for more than a decade. I think it's been around since probably about 2008, maybe 2005. This is not at all new. It's just
I will
that,
share with the team tomorrow and see if any of them know it exists. Yeah, thank you, Kevin. This is
yeah,
very useful. Very useful. I can think of a number of scenarios where we can use it.
yeah. I mean, I would say, probably, if I were to guess that team, probably two people. If you were to hit me on who would know about this, I can think of two people who would probably know, and the rest of them would be like, no, never heard of it.
Oh,
But
okay. Uh-huh.
when you're looking for some or any, when I see that, I think, why not just use an exists clause? When you use
Yeah.
all is, I have an equality or inequality operator, and I want to know if every single record in that set is going to match this equality or inequality operator. And so I might say, if all of select my values, select dollar amounts from this table are greater than 0, then okay, good, my data set has valid information. Otherwise, I might say, oh well, this has some bad info. And I could find the cases, for example, where I want to find the accounts that have transactions of less than $0. Even so, when I think about that, I'm like, I could just use an exists clause, and I could write exists and not exists, and I don't know that there's going to be a performance difference between the two. There could very well be. That's all going to be specific to implementation of the scalars, of the scalar functions. But yeah, this is syntax in the SQL standard that does allow you to perform equality and inequality operations on entire collections of data as opposed to a single value. And even so, I can count the number of times that I've used it on at most one finger. I might have used it one of those once. I don't think I've ever used one twice. Just because it's a piece of syntax. It's sort of like roll up and cube, where roll up and cube are really useful. I just never remember that they exist. Grouping sets, I remember it exists, and I like to use it a lot. But roll up and cube, no, just forget about them. Not because they're bad. I think they're actually pretty solid. Just don't know. Blanks my mind. And in this case, because I'm pretty sure that you could write any statement using some or any with an exists and using all with a not exists, I think that you could write equivalent statements both ways. I pivot mostly toward just exists and not exists because those also provide the additional things that I think some or any and all might not apply or bring available. Like if I have a more complex operation, a more complex clause where it's not necessarily a single scalar value that I want to get, then I could see exists or not exists being more generically applicable version. So, still something to point out. Mike pointed this out because he was doing some Oracle related work, and it could be that in the Oracle space they tend to use that more often than in the SQL Server space. That might just be a peculiarity of the different developer sets between those two languages or between those two platforms, or it could just be that Mike works in a shop where somebody uses it. So that is our syntax discussion of the day, and hopefully you got something out of that. So at this point, I'm scrolling down the list of topics we've got, and I'm afraid we're dangerously close to me talking about category theory, and I'm pretty sure that's something that nobody wants, including me. So, do you have anything, Mala? Do you have any way to rescue us from the horrors of my talking about functional programming yet again?
Oh, we have exactly 8 minutes more to go. So, let me think.
So one time in band camp, Ender says.
Let me think if anything came up.
Now we're at the point where this is where the best content is. That we've hit the bottom, we've hit the barrel, we scraped the barrel, we've got the underscrapings of the barrel, and I know.
Yeah, I'm going to ask an odd question that occurred to me today while talking to somebody at work. Has anybody here mentored or trained other people you work with, like teach someone like they would learn from a class? Do you do that at work? Do you have time or the motivation to do that? Because an effort like that is going on, and there's been some debate, some discussion around it. So I'm just curious if anybody in the audience here, have you ever done that, or have you worked at a place where that's the norm, where
Yeah.
not a teaching gig, to your colleagues, the people you work with?
Yep. So Anders has an answer. Yes, 6-week boot camp to teach people SQL, and that was colleagues. I've done something not quite as formal as what new hires. Yeah, not quite as formal, but still a lot of training, structured training and teaching. Mentoring is, I think that in the tech world we tend to conflate mentoring with technical training, and that in a lot of cases they're not at all the same. That this is something that I had the fortunate experience of Paul Randall doing some mentoring. It was entirely online. It was entirely through email, and he had this big mentoring project. It was in, I think, 2015. So in it, he explicitly said, I'm not going to talk to you about anything really technical. I'm not here to train you on technical stuff. If you have some questions about where to learn, where to get better, we can talk about that. But I'm not going to teach you technical things in this. Instead, it's about discussion of where you're at, where you want to be, and how you can get there. And I think that's where a lot of the best mentorship comes in. Lesson 1, Anders says, how to say no. That is, for a new hire, frankly, that's a good lesson for pretty much anybody. I know that we joke about DBAs being the no people, and DBAs are a place where people who have oppositional defiance disorder can get meaningful jobs. And I appreciate that. I lean into that pretty heavily. But learning the right, not only how to say no, but how to say no in the right way, as opposed to I'm a roadblock and someone's going to go up, over, around, or through me, and into, hang on, have you actually thought about this? Let's think about this, and then you'll eventually find out you don't want to do that. That is a very valuable skill. Lesson 2, how to say no and stay employed. Lesson I think lesson 1.5 in there is how to get a new job after you got fired for saying no to a really dumb idea that happened to be supported by C levels. But joking aside, that is the type of skill that is meaningful, and it's not technical. It's not. I'm going to train you on syntax. I'm going to train you on understanding query tuning, on understanding these concepts, even on architecture. It tends to be more of let me get into more of the craft side of the skill instead of the technical if X then Y side of the skill, where I can show you, if you need to learn more about the technical side, here's the book to pick up. Like if you need to learn T-SQL, great. Let me give you a copy of Itzik's book. That's your first thing. Go through that book twice. First time you go through it, you're going to say, wow, this is amazing. Second time you go through it, you're going to say, wow, how did I miss all this stuff on my first run through? And okay, cool. You've gotten a lot of the technical side right there. Like you're saying, Anders, the technical side is easy. Yeah, there's quite a bit of information. I think the hardest part about the technical side is figuring out, one, what to focus on, and two, what information to filter out. That you will be inundated with all kinds of information, much of which is going to range anywhere from adequate to good. There's some really great stuff. There's some absolutely miserable stuff. The miserable stuff, oftentimes we can, with a little bit of experience, filter it out pretty quickly. The great stuff may be difficult to find, but it's trying to find a way that you're not constantly stuck with a pile of things to learn, and you have 900 hours of content, and therefore you engage in 0 hours of content because it's just too overwhelming. In many cases, let's find a way to pare that down and make it a reasonable focused task, which is a mentoring skill. But how do I make the best use of my available time? How do I narrow things down, or find the right person, find the right concept, find the right content, find the right skill, develop out my own skills, and be able to finish a sentence that includes several commas while maintaining correct syntax and grammar throughout. That's also a skill. I'm just going to gloat in that for a little bit. But having that ability to make coherent sentences, to complete thoughts, and to engage with any sort of rhetorical flourish is vital to the point of argumentation, to the point of changing people's minds, of bringing them on your side, and maybe not doing that really dumb thing that somebody threw out as an idea because they needed to get something done and didn't have a clue otherwise. Memorizing the APA manual. Oof. I would much rather, 10 times out of 10, much rather read the old Roman orators. You will get much better results than memorizing the APA manual.
So good rant, Kevin, and I completely agree.
So good job, Mala, for being able to fill in those last 8 minutes without us having to break out the nuclear option of category theory. There's somebody in chat, I'm sure, who's just being very quiet, saying, oh, I really wish he got into that. I wanted to know where do I find resources on category theory? But no, today, sadly, you're not going to find that. But if you stay tuned, next episode, we might run out of content again. And then, maybe then, we'll get category theory. And Anders, it is good to have you back. We appreciate you being here. But for now, one quick reminder, tomorrow, Ed Pollack is going to be talking to us. Ed is going to talk about gaps and islands, some deeper, I believe it's going to be some more advanced scenarios with gaps and islands, not the classic, I have an integer and I want to find a range between integers type of problem. It's an excellent talk. I've seen him give a variant of this talk before, so really looking forward to it. That's our advanced DBA session. That is tomorrow. Our main meeting, which will be next Tuesday, is from this guy, locking down Azure Synapse Analytics. And our BI and data science meeting 2 weeks from tomorrow is Heidi Hasting, who will be talking to us about sensitivity labels on documents. So we've got a lot to cover through the month of October for TriPass. If you're not a member already, meetup.com/TriPass. Let me drop a link in chat just in case, although I start to ask, how in the world did you get here otherwise? But meetup.com/TriPass. Go ahead, join us. Remember, fill out that survey. Let me drop a link again to the survey just in case you didn't see it the first time around and don't want to scroll all the way up to find it. And with that, we're going to say, until we see each other again, everyone, take care.
Be well. Take care.